West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël.
We begin tonight with breaking news, a potentially explosive development in Jack Smith's federal case against Donald Trump and his attempt to overturn the 2020 election. ABC News is reporting that Mark Meadows, Trump's White House chief of staff, was granted immunity by the special counsel in exchange for his testimony under oath before a grand jury. ABC reports that according to sources familiar with the matter, Meadows has spoken with Smith's team at least 3 times this year and reportedly told them that he had warned the former president about his election lies. ABC reports, quote, the sources said Meadows informed Smith's team that he repeatedly told Trump in the weeks after the 2020 presidential election that the allegations of significant voting fraud coming to them were baseless, a striking break from Trump's prolific rhetoric regarding the election. According to the sources, Meadows also told the federal investigators that Trump was being dishonest with the public when he first claimed to have won the election only hours after polls closed on November 3rd, 2020, before final results were even in. Obviously, we didn't win, a source quoted Meadows as telling Smith's team in hindsight. NBC News has not confirmed this reporting, but this testimony from Meadows, one of the people closest to Trump at the time, would be critical evidence in Smith's case and his ability to establish proof beyond a doubt that Trump knew he lost and tried to overturn a Democratic election anyway. I'm joined now by Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California. This seems to me, Congressman Schiff, to be the big one because Mark Meadows was the closest person to Trump and in helping him overturn the election. Your take on this news from ABC?
Well, I think it is very big news. In a way, it's not surprising. People never expected Mark Meadows to be a Steve Bannon, gleefully riding into jail on behalf of Donald Trump. That is not Mark Meadows. He never signed up to go to jail. He was, carrying out Donald Trump's dirty work every day. But self-preservation has kicked in, and it appears that he is cooperating. The challenge with him is he's written a book which was touting all the Trump lies. He's told a lot of the Trump lies himself, so he is not a perfect witness by any means. But nevertheless, having him be able to confirm conversations, having him be able to share firsthand information about what Donald Trump knew and saw, any acknowledgement of his loss of the election privately while Trump was out publicly telling the big lie, all of that is still going to be very useful for prosecutors.
It is, you mentioned the book, and he is now allegedly, at least according to ABC's reporting, admitted that he doesn't even believe the stuff in his book. In terms of, his usefulness to prosecutors, you did mention the book. The fact that he is now saying that he published a book presumably took an advance in payment from the publisher, and now says and is telling investigators he doesn't even believe what's in the book. How does that taint or impact him as a witness?
It'll certainly impact his credibility. You can imagine if he were called as a witness by Jack Smith to testify about what Trump did and said, he would be impeached with his own words in his book, which is why you're going to need corroboration for what Meadows is saying, other means of proof. Still useful, still important. Prosecutors will make the case, as they often do in organized crime cases, that crooks surround themselves with other crooks. And you're going to have to rely on, imperfect witnesses to tell the story. But, for someone that close to Trump, in all the meetings, to essentially have flipped and be willing to talk is significant. I do think more valuable witnesses are people like Cipollone, the White House counsel, and others that don't have quite as strong a taint as Mark Meadows. But nevertheless, this is an important development. You add to it these other lawyers surrounding Trump, the Sidney Powells, the Jenna Ellises, the Chesbros, and others. And the walls start closing in on Donald Trump.
Yeah, indeed. And of course, Jenna Ellis now also taking a plea. Let me let you respond to that, because now you do have somebody who was in supposedly this high level team of the strike force, they called themselves. Now, 2 out of the 3 of the members of this supposed strike force, Sidney Powell and Jenna Ellis, have pleaded guilty. For Donald Trump, this does seem pretty dire.
It does. These are basically, I think they were referred to by, the White House counsel lawyers as the clown car lawyers. The team, there was Team Normal and then there was Team Clown Car. These were members of the clown car along with Giuliani. I think both Donald Trump needs to be worried about them providing state's evidence, but also Rudy Giuliani needs to be concerned. These were a couple of his right-hand people. Yeah. And it's all cumulative. You can use them to corroborate documentary evidence. You can use them to set the time and place of other meetings. They'll provide insights you can't get from others. So it's just adding to the body of evidence. And for those who wondered, why is the Fulton County DA indicting 19 people in the same indictment? You can't possibly try a case with 19 people. Well, you can't. She doesn't have to anymore. Every day, every week, more people are pleading guilty, and they're going to be taken out of the trial and be added to the stable of witnesses.
Absolutely. Let me read a little bit of this reporting, ABC, on whether Trump acknowledged that he lost. This is important to his defense. While speaking with investigators, Meadows was specifically asked if Trump ever acknowledged him that he lost the election. Meadows told investigators he never heard Trump say that, according to sources. What do you make of that?
Well, I think, in that reporting as well, there is an acknowledgement by Trump when the Supreme Court rules against him. Well, that's it. I'm done. But he wasn't done. And he went on to challenge the election in other ways. And this is what you get with Mark Meadows. You're going to get kind of a little bit on this side, a little bit on that side. That is, sort of how he conducted affairs in the White House, telling each different group that appeared what they wanted to hear. And I think we're seeing more of this in the reporting about his testimony before the grand jury. But it's very characteristic of who he is. And that is, quite chameleon-like, which does make him challenging as a witness, not without value, potentially with significant value, but certainly not problem-free either.
As you just mentioned, per the ABC, when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on December 11, 2020, denying the final court challenge, Trump told Meadows something to the effect of, that's it, that's the end. There's also this reporting from ABC that Meadows has allegedly told investigators that Trump seemed to grow increasingly concerned as he learned about what was transpiring at the Capitol and was visibly shaken when he heard that someone had been shot there. Your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a new insight that we haven't heard. We have certainly seen and heard testimony about how cavalierly he was watching these events unfold in the dining room, calmly taking this in on the television, while people kept coming in and pleading with him to do something. And, some of the most powerful testimony was that when Meadows was being pushed to get the president to do something, to call it off, there was the response, well, you've heard what he said, essentially words to the effect of, he thinks Pence deserves it. And so being able to get Meadows on the record, we have, this conversation secondhand from others, being able to ask Meadows about that conversation and others will be really useful to prosecutors.
Let me play Cassidy Hutchinson, who was just on with my colleague Ari Melber just a little while ago. This is what she had to say and her initial reaction to Meadows' apparent cooperation.
In my experience, Mark was sort of all over the board in some ways. You know, he would privately admit to me sometimes that we had lost the election, or sometimes he would privately admit to me that Trump had said that we had lost the election. But Mark also was a key player in bringing in characters like Sidney Powell and like Jenna Ellis. In my experience, he would at times acknowledge what I have read in the ABC report.
I mean, the all over the place, sort of status of Mark Meadows even came out in the January 6th hearings, where he's sort of catatonic when the violence is happening and says, as you said, he doesn't want to do anything. Trump doesn't want to do anything, and that he thought Pence deserved it. Cassidy Hutchinson also says in her new book that Mark Meadows burned so many papers after the 2020 election that it left his office smoky and even prompted his wife to complain that his suits smelled like a bonfire. That, to me, sounds incredibly damning. Getting an immunity deal when you might have been burning evidence seems odd to me. Do you think that at some point he will be prosecuted either by Georgia or by someone else?
I really can't say. I really don't know whether
he is in Georgia. Sorry,
sort of chameleon-like evade prosecution by cutting deals. That testimony from Cassidy, as the former chair of the Intel Committee, was alarming to me at the time. It's alarming to me today. We were really never able to get to the bottom of what he was destroying. And I would hope that as a part of his cooperation, we get new insights on that. He might, have, important value, for example, in the Mar-a-Lago documents case. He might be able to shed light on how some of those documents got there, his conversations with the president, or warnings that were made to him and the president. But for the sake of national security, I hope that any deal would also require him to be truthful about that. Final, point on that is, would it make sense to have a deal with somebody involved in that kind of conduct? Really depends on the value of their testimony. And presumably, if Smith gave Meadows immunity, it was either because it would be difficult to prosecute him, or because the value of what he was getting was so significant, it outweighed the benefit of bringing him to justice.
It is Wednesday, the 25th of October of 2023. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl. And she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? No one. Okay, and it's always plural because there's lots more of them now than there used to be back in Beckett's day. All right. Jeez. Everybody's a bishop now. Okay, and we don't mean anything untoward in the mob, communique about meddlesome priests. Okay, we don't mean it like that. And anyway, Smothered Benedict is really, I have to say, just a reference to a lovely, fluffy egg dish with a velvety hollandaise sauce. Okay, velvety. Oh, I had one of the best hollandaise sauces that I've had, I gotta say, in quite some time. So a lot of people in the kitchens are a little heavy-handed with the lemon juice, okay? And it's one thing if it's like you squeeze the lemon out of a half lemon, which is really too much to begin with, but you know what I'm saying. Just directly right into the pan is one thing, but when you pull that acidic, it turns in the fridge. I gotta say, Minute Maid lemon concentrate in the fridge. I don't know why people use that. Get a real lemon. If you can't find a real lemon, then you got to find another piece of citrus. All right? Acidic. But some people are much too heavy-handed. I know that's redundant. But here we go. It's still the morning. And it can be a little bit, shall we say, piquant, a little tart. So I actually experienced someone who knows how to make a proper hollandaise for production. Okay, it's one thing to be able to do it for, like 6 at your table in the morning. And it's another to do it so that it lasts all day. Okay. Just saying. Okay. All right. So, Smothered Benedict, velvety hollandaise. Yummy. And here we go. All right. Well, do we have a speaker yet? Are we going to have this insurrection guy who but has been described as currently being the architect of the insurrection? They're going to get that guy into the speakership so that, when Donald Trump says, hey, what I want you to do, I want you to do me a favor, though. And he's on a phone call, and it's a perfect phone call. And he tells this guy, all right, Green Bay sweep. And he'll do what Pence would not do. Because this guy is an architect of that plan. All right. I heard one of these repugs on camera for the world to see that the reason that they kicked out Emmer is because he's the most moderate in their caucus. Emmer, the most moderate. As if moderation is a liability, apparently. This guy was saying if they're not as extreme as like the rest of us, or even more extreme, we don't want them. Broker a deal with the enemy, and you know who the enemy is? Not Russia. Not China. Not Iran. Not Hamas. Not et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know who the enemy is? Us. You and me. And why? Because we believe in equality, justice, and the American way. Jeez. How much longer are we going to take this? My God. We'll show them Antifa. Ha! They keep confusing Black Bloc, which is a bunch of anarchists. And I got to tell you, even that nomenclature, where am I going with this? Even that label of being an anarchist, Black Bloc, my experience with Black Bloc is that there were quite a few Asian provocateurs among that group. Anarchists. Well, the whole thing or idea is just to F everything up, and that's what these people are doing. They do not want the government to run, especially now that they are in a position to completely starve government of all funding. When the funding bill comes due in just, a couple of weeks, will they have the apparatus in which to be able to vote on a bill? And when they do have the apparatus to vote on that bill, what will that bill be? Senate seems to have its act together, but I got to tell you, there's some bomb throwers in that group also. That chamber has Tuberville and others. Well, we know what to do, and we'll do it again. We'll just go to the ballot box in such enormous numbers once again to be able to kick these bums out. Bums, I like that. I'm getting cantankerous. Oh, yeah. But it's true. Because they can only exist and be able to manipulate on the margins. And every time we've been able to make any kind of headway, to the point of like they're calling Joe Genocide Joe, boy, at least we got him elevated to that. We're going to send aid trucks into Gaza, and we want to make sure that Gazans aren't exterminated by indiscriminate bombing. And Israel has to follow international rules of law. And they call him Genocide Joe. Okay. So much to process. So much to rant about. That one just stops all the synapses going and just sends me into a reptilian froth. Yeah. So I'm just saying that there's bomb throwers in the Senate chamber. You got Tuberville and others. But we have a majority. That's right. So this mess could be, well, alleviated simply by the fact that we go to the ballot box and Hakeem Jeffries is then Speaker of the House. Because he knows how to count. He learned it from Nancy. Who they are still, I mean, you got like a massacre apologist going to Nancy Pelosi's office in San Francisco and protesting, doing the Earth First tactic of welding their arms together with these weird pipes, you know, so that it's like harder to, I guess, take them away. Just take them all away. That's right. Put them in like Gumby into the paddy wagon. Okay. You want to bend your arm in a weird way? Go ahead. Cops don't care. They live for that. But they go to Nancy's office. Okay. No one's going to Daryl Isa's office. Or even McCarthy's in Bakersfield. You know why? Because Bakersfield sucks. And that's, I'm sorry, Bakersfield. I mean, comparatively, okay? Do you have a wax museum? No. Well, anyway, that's why they go to Nancy's office. I'm sure of it. Anyway, I wish that they would stop calling our president Genocide Joe, especially in this instance. And we know the actors involved in pushing this meme. Oh, also, there was a news site on Twitter or social media, actually, that was listed on, I believe it was Rachel Maddow's show on Monday, that is one of the top disseminators of misinformation and agitprop on Twitter right now, especially around the Israeli Hamas debacle. And something that we, meaning me, and some of the rest of us have cited and retweeted, so we should be careful. And which one is it? As was Viesgard 24, I believe. Viesgard 24. I actually, just as a strategy now, is I hold off when I hear these outlandish claims. Even with the bombing of the hospital, I held off on that because I didn't know what I was really seeing. It didn't occur to me to take one of those image reverse generators on Google and figure it out, but I guess I'm going to have to now. All of us have to. But I had no idea if what I was seeing was an actual hospital in Gaza bombed by a missile or one in Syria. I just don't know. So I held off. I think a lot of us should. Because that's the other thing. They want us to respond. I keep responding to that Bridget Gabriel lady. You know, paid shill on social media to push these, I don't know, what is it, 2020, what's their plan again, 2025? I don't know, some weird thing. It's instead of the 1619 Project, which is a history of, well, America and its commerce in human beings. with some sort of weird project, like the 2025 project, is that it? In which they're going to like take over the world. And they're going to start with America, which they've already started with decades ago. And I'm looking at you, Leonard Leo, and your cabal of billionaire fascists. You know, you don't have to be a fascist to be a billionaire. I keep telling people this. They think it's like, well, it's a prerequisite. Once you become a billionaire, you have to be a complete dick. Really? I don't know. There's a way of being exceedingly rich on that level and not being a complete dick. I mean, I understand that there's got to be a bit of dictitude to be able to amass that kind of, or shall we say hoard that kind of wealth. But you don't have to be a complete dick about it. Please. Equality. Truth in the American way. What's so wrong with that? Okay. All right. I guess we've ruminated enough, which is a nice way of saying the morning rant has gone on far too long. And we should really look at the curated part of the salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. What do we have in store? Oh, yeah, at the top there, that was Raskin explaining that the DOJ granting Meadows immunity is not surprising because his self-preservation kicked in. Mm-hmm. Fight or flight? Sometimes you just better, all right, where do I sign? On the rest of the menu in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, the wealthy Nashville suburb of Franklin roundly rejected the scandal-scarred MAGA mayoral candidate and her coterie of Nazi white supremacists. Yeah, you know who we're talking about. Oh, Texas sued the Biden administration, seeking to stop federal agents from cutting the state's inhumane razor wire on the border. And the Senate voted 98-0 to confirm Biden's nominee to run the Federal Aviation Federation. Wow. See, the Senate can actually get things done. After the break, we move to the chef's table where China replaced its defense minister mere months after its foreign minister was removed from office. They have a regular night of the long knives there in China, just to be clear. And women across Iceland, including the prime minister, went on strike for equal pay and no more violence. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. The bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Across the page to the left from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And I won't bore you, and I know that I have, and I always will, with our consistent and constant plea for help in running this powerhouse of resistance. But I just feel compelled to let you know that the costs keep going up, and we could use the help. So thank you for helping. Okay, the link's right there. All right, we'll fill you in on how you can help us by, I don't know, instead of sending us an actual cup of coffee, you send us the money that you would spend on that on a monthly basis. So I'll tell you about that some other day, maybe tomorrow. Okay, maybe I just did. Anyway, Thank you for your generosity. And it really has helped us, truly. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, etc., you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. All of those. I think Kelly's actually taking care of the Facebook page, and maybe me sometimes. But Tom takes care of the rest, and thank you, Tom. And thank you both, Kelly and Tom, for everything that you do here at Netroots Radio. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, and I'll tell you why you should, just one moment, hang on there. You can do so on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, wherever. You can do so at Justice Putnam. And I'll tell you why. Here we are. I post the show notes and links diary 10 minutes before showtime, and that's where the real reportage and articles can be found, and you can find those easily by following my social media feeds, because the links are right there. Take you right to the Daily Coast Diaries, and you can take your pick. And you can pick today if you like, and that'll come up, or does come up, 10 minutes before showtime. So there. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, I'll tell you, it's just a placemat still. You can do so at Cookbook West. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, really wherever podcasts can be found. You just can't find them on Stitcher. So there. Can't. Go to that page and see what it says. I'm telling you. Okay. Let us now tuck into this first offering in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it is Out of the Daily Beast by Josh Fialo. The wealthy Nashville suburb of Franklin roundly rejected what is likely the most controversial mayoral candidate in its history, deciding Gabrielle Hans's myriad scandals, including several instances in which she cozied up to white supremacists, was just too much to stomach. The local real estate developer lost with just 20% of the vote, keeping the city of 85,000's longtime incumbent, Ken Moore, in office for another 4 years. Other mega candidates in the city fared largely the same, with a trio of alderman hopefuls supported by what Nashville's News Channel 5 described as a far-right pack called Williamson Families, were sent packing by voters as well. Goodbye. Now, yesterday's results, Tuesday, put a cap on a chaotic campaign for Hansen, who seemingly found herself embroiled in new controversies weekly on the home stretch of her election bid. Hansen, at the time a city alderman, first grabbed national headlines in the spring when she tried to block a pride event in Franklin, arguing that the attire of the attendees was a threat to children. Oh, no. Hansen was unable to shut down the event, but the stunt earned her street cred with the city's conservatives. Soon after, Hansen announced her plans to run for mayor against Moore, who was first elected to the position in 2011. She quickly notched an endorsement from the city's Moms for Liberty chapter. Oh, that fascist org. A right-wing advocacy organization that's been labeled an extremist group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and for good reason. And Hansen began echoing far-right talking points. Far-right's just a nice way of saying Nazi. She loudly lambasted the city for planning to install historical markers about historical racial injustice in the area. Memorials she deemed to be racial terror markers. She was grilled for threatening to retaliate against a local airport for supporting a Juneteenth festival, and was slammed by Nashville cops for spreading false information about a horrific mass shooting at the city's Covenant School. Hansen's outlandish comments brought more eyes on Franklin, a quiet city that scores of country music stars and other wealthy Tennesseans call home. Later in her campaign, the controversy surrounding Hansen became less about her political ambitions, like restoring traditional values and protecting our families, and more about her personal life. Oh, let's see. What do they have? In September, Nashville News Channel 5 revealed that Hansen was arrested in college for promoting prostitution in Texas, a crime she insisted was only a misdemeanor and a misunderstanding, but was later revealed to have been a felony conviction. Oh, she was a pimp, or I guess technically for the area, a madam. Ooh. A week later, the same news station revealed another bombshell. Hansen, who so vehemently fought against a local pride event because of the attendees' attire, had once cheered her husband on as he donned nothing but an American flag Speedos and sandals at a Chicago Pride parade in 2008. The report, written by Phil Williams, included a photo of the scantily clad Tom Hansen, who was then a congressional candidate in Illinois' 5th District. Oh, how nice. From there, Hansen's scandals came hard and quick. On September 27th, the same day that news broke about Tom's Speedo photo, Hansen's supporters formed a blockade to keep Williams, the TV reporter, from entering a campaign for him, with one Hansen supporter taking a swipe at him. Inside the event, a journalist recorded Hansen saying, "No, Channel 5, they have to leave." At Hansen's next forum, she was escorted inside by a pair of white supremacists who were part of the Tennessee Active Club, an organization also deemed a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Other club members stood on guard outside, telling reporters they were a Hansen security detail. Despite calls from local politicians, Hansen never disavowed the group, which was spotted carrying Nazi flags at a drag bunch in Cookville. That's in Tennessee, by the way, earlier this year. She insisted she didn't invite the group to her forum personally, but active club members disputed that, saying they were invited over concerns related to, wait for it, Antifa. Gonzalez of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Texas sued the Biden administration yesterday, Tuesday, seeking to stop federal agents from cutting the state's razor wire that has gashed or snagged migrants as they have attempted to enter the U.S. from Mexico at the Rio Grande. In the lawsuit filed in federal court in Del Rio, Texas, Attorney General Ken Paxton accuses the Biden administration of undermining the state's border security efforts. State authorities started rolling out miles of the concertina wire in May before the end of Title 42, a temporary emergency health authority used to turn migrants back during the pandemic. The sharp wire was deployed in areas of high traffic through the Rio Grande at the border near such locations as Brownsville and Eagle Pass, Texas. Migrant and environmental advocates quickly raised concerns over the damaging effects of the razor wire, which were also raised internally by those charged with enforcing its use. A state trooper and medic described the use of their border tactics as inhumane in July when he sent an internal complaint documenting cases of lacerated and injured migrants. The barrier is set up a few yards from the river, or sometimes at the edge of it, and would keep migrants in the water, sometimes for hours, waiting for U.S. Border Patrol tasked with processing them under immigration law. In some cases, federal agents have had to break through the wire to gain access to entangled migrants. Bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Senate voted 98-0 to approve President Joe Biden's nominee to lead the Federal Aviation Administration, ending a span of nearly 19 months in which the agency was without a Senate-confirmed chief. Michael Whitaker is a former deputy FAA administrator and most recently served as chief operating officer of a Hyundai affiliate that is developing an air taxi. Whitaker will take over an agency that faces many challenges, including a surge in close calls between planes at major airports, a shortage of air traffic controllers, and aging technology that resulted in a brief nationwide halt in flights in January, not to mention mushroom-addled pilots on their day off. Well, granted, the guy was mourning a dead relative or colleague, but still tried to turn off the engines. They're having a lot of that happening now. Now, Whitaker's confirmation seemed assured last week when members of the Senate Commerce Committee endorsed him unanimously. On the Senate floor yesterday, Tuesday, Committee Chair Maria Cantwell, Democrat of Washington, said Whitaker's priorities will be to, quote, build a strong safety culture, attract new talent, and keep pace with technology transformation, end quote. Whitaker was Biden's second choice for the job. The nomination of Denver International Airport CEO Phil Washington languished for months, then failed to get out of the Commerce Committee because of opposition from Republicans and Independent Kristen Sinema of Arizona. Just don't say it was because he was black. Just don't. And that brings us to our break. And why don't we? And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, one swift review. While the rock scene has its deadheads and parrot heads, the pop scene's artist-specific fan bases have been more ephemeral, perhaps due to the age of those fans, until today's Swifties, the devotees of pop star Taylor Swift, who aren't all 12. More is going on here. Despite their success, the Backstreet Boys or Britney Spears never turned a movie of one of their shows into $100 million in a week or a tour into $4 billion and counting. Eras is the name of that tour and the impressive 168-minute concert film, and it is primarily for Swifties. As the title implies, the show focuses on the eras of Swift's career as distinguished by her albums. With the exception of those demarcations noted on screen, there are no captions or other text, nor any interview or background footage, much like Muse's 2019 Simulation Theory. The production is dazzling, and for the price of a nosebleed seat in some stadium, you are right there, and then some, gliding and swooping with the floor and drone cameras. As to what else is going on here, we're not in the habit of referring to other reviews, but there's a negative one in a right-wing mag called the National Review that in its reciprocal, and in far less time than we have here, is key to understanding what's cool and important about the Swifties. The perspective of that reviewer is that of an old codger threatening kids in his yard, sort of a Harold Bloom without the intellect, and who sees civilizational threat behind every trend, especially if youthful and inquisitive. Just turning your back on this crap is reason enough to check out Eras, but in addition, you'll enjoy a damn fine pop show. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. The U.S. government sent a diplomatic cable October 20th to over 100 countries, warning of Russia's efforts to disrupt elections, including amplifying disinformation like the Stop the Steal movement here in the U.S. The AP, Voice of America, and The Guardian report that recently declassified information shows Russia continues to use social media and websites to weaken democratic elections around the world. Those efforts attempted to undermine public confidence in 11 elections in 9 democracies between 2020 and 2022, and influence elections in 17 other countries. According to the cable, Russian tactics included using internet trolls and social media influencers to stir up suspicion and doubt about elections. U.S. officials suggest the success and low costs of interference efforts in the U.S. has encouraged Russian efforts to influence democratic elections elsewhere in the world. Russian operatives reportedly coordinated election official intimidation and an election day protest in one European country. A U.S. intelligence official interviewed by Voice of America said that Russians are, quote, amplifying existing domestic narratives, unquote, questioning the fairness of the election or that the election didn't work. U.S. recommendations to combat the interference included expelling the operatives responsible for the disinformation and expanding use of independent observers during elections. We have more at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2002. That was the day that working people of the United States lost one of their greatest champions in Washington. Two-term Minnesota Senator Paul Wellstone died tragically in a plane crash. The crash took place just 11 days before Election Day. Wellstone was running for his third term in office. His wife, daughter, 3 aides, and 2 pilots also died in the crash. Wellstone was known for fighting for those who didn't have a voice in the halls of power. The poor, the workers, the farmers, the seniors. He once famously said, "I'm here to represent the little fellers, not the Rockefellers." The most impactful legislation the senator passed was the Paul Wellstone Mental Health and Addiction Equality Act of 2007. It required insurance providers to treat mental health at the same level that they would provide for physical health care. When he died, the United Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers of America remembered Wellstone as the strongest voice for America's working families in the United States Senate. AFSCME Local 34 wrote, "He was the best friend that AFSCME had in the U.S. Senate and supported us and the issues that affected working families." At a 10-year commemoration of his death, Minnesota Governor Mark Dayton called Wellstone the conscience of the Senate. In January, the AFL-CIO established the Wellstone Award. The award honors elected leaders who take a strong stand for workers' freedom to come together in unions and who fight for social and economic justice. Wellstone once said, "Politics is not about power. Politics is not about money. Politics is not about winning for the sake of winning. Politics is about the improvement of people's lives." We could sure use more senators like Paul Wellstone today. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 44 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of only around 53 or so. We have showers occurring right now and had quite a bit of rain overnight, and it did indeed bring with it about a quarter inch. And we'll have light rain a little bit later this morning that will be transitioning to a few showers in the afternoon. And winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And we're going to get something about, 15% or 0.15 inches of rain. What is that? Anyway, it looks like we'll get some. Now, partly cloudy skies overnight. Lows in the mid to upper 30s, so we're getting the chilly nights now. Winds light and variable. And then partly cloudy skies tomorrow with highs in the mid to upper 50s. Winds light and variable, and we may have a, quote, drying out period until it looks like maybe just after the weekend, maybe sooner. Pollen is rated as none here in our little village of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 22 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at level 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.94 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 96%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 58 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 60 degrees and mostly cloudy. Rome is 72 and mostly cloudy with a advisory for potential disruptions due to thunderstorms. Bagram is 56 and clear. Kyiv is 50 degrees and cloudy. Beijing is 78 and fair. Tokyo is 60 degrees and clear. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 48 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 55 and partly cloudy. Chicago, Illinois is 60 degrees and cloudy. And New York, New York is 62 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Christopher Bodine, working the world desk at the Associated Press, brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. China has replaced Defense Minister General Li Shangfu, who has been out of public view for almost 2 months, state media reported yesterday, Tuesday. No further information was given. Li is the second senior official to disappear this year, following former Foreign Minister Jin Gang, who was removed from office in July with no explanation offered. Li, who became defense minister during a cabinet reshuffle in March, has not been seen since giving a speech on August 29th. There was no indication that the disappearances of Jin and Li signal a change in China's foreign or defense policies, although they have raised questions about the resilience of President and ruling Communist Party leader Xi Jinping's circle of power. Xi has a reputation for valuing loyalty above all else, where have we heard that before, and has relentlessly attacked corruption in public and private, sometimes in what has been seen as a method of eliminating political rivals, and shoring up his political position amid a deteriorating economy and rising tensions with the United States over trade, technology, and Taiwan.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Joel Bjornsson, also working the world desk at the Associated Press, brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Schools, shops, banks, and Iceland's famous swimming pools shut down yesterday, Tuesday, as women in the volcanic island nation, including the Prime Minister, went on strike to push for an end to unequal pay and gender-based violence. Icelanders awoke to all-male news crew teams announcing shutdowns across the country, with public transport delayed, hospitals understaffed, and hotel rooms uncleaned. Trade unions, the strike's main organizers, called on women and non-binary people to refuse paid and unpaid work, including chores. About 90% of the country's workers belong to a union. Prime Minister Katrín Jakobsdóttir said she would stay home as part of the strike, and expected other women in her cabinet would do the same. Iceland, a rugged island of around 380,000 people just below the Arctic Circle, has been ranked as the world's most gender-equal country 14 years in a row by the World Economic Forum, which measures pay, education, health, and other factors. No country has achieved full equality, and there remains a major gender pay gap in Iceland. Yesterday's walkout, running from midnight to midnight, was billed as the biggest since Iceland's first such event on October 24th, 1975. I remember it well because my mom went on strike in Orange County because of this. And that was when 90% of women refused to work, clean, or look after children to voice anger at discrimination in the workplace. In 1976, Iceland passed a law guaranteeing equal rights irrespective of gender. Since then, there have been several partial day strikes, most recently in 2018, with women walking off the job in the early afternoon, symbolizing the time of day when women on average stop earning compared to men. Gatherings were held across Iceland yesterday, the largest in Reykjavik, where much of the capital center was closed to traffic, and tens of thousands gathered on the grassy Arnóll Hill for a rally. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.